Perfect. All right, team. Well, welcome. This is using data from the Coxing seat. So hopefully we're not going to get into super detail. Hopefully we can cover sort of through from novice right up to those that are competing to a high level. So we're going to try and cover quite a broad area. Um, so with that, we're not going to go into insane amounts of detail to make sure that we're really getting the information out there and making sure it's really simple and easy to digest. Uh, firstly, just looking at what data is available to you in the Cox's seat. So simple things like there's the stroke rate, um, knowing how many, I mean, this might seem really simple, really obvious, but knowing how many strokes are taken each minute, really helpful for the Cox in terms of just managing pieces and training, but also really helpful in terms of knowing the sort of stroke rate that your crew might go off a start at, the stroke rate that your crew might hit at their base pace. And it's quite a useful thing that I'd say I probably as a Cox would use almost the most out of all data that's put in front of me. And then there's the live splits. So either taken from an impeller if that's sort of attached to the boat, but more commonly now read through the GPS, and that's taken every 500 meters. So that split that you'll see on the ergo, that big number in the middle, that's what we're looking at there. And so there's some really good things about that you can have with GPS now. It's much, much more accurate than it ever used to be. So you can get that live data in front of you to say how fast that crew is going in that moment, which is really useful if you're trying to make technical changes or speed changes. But the other thing with speeds and splits is I think that it's super important to have a bit of an idea on, okay, well, we're going against the stream. So if our speeds are, I don't know, let's say they're 2 minutes 30 going against the stream in an 8, but then you spin around, you go with the stream and your speeds are 1 minute 15. It's about being able to manage and understand your crew's expectation of what it is that you're trying to change. So it's always looking at making sure that it's relative to the numbers that you're seeing in front of you. Distance per stroke, so how far you're going in each stroke. Really useful in terms of a piece of information. We just talked about the live speeds. So if you're looking at the speeds, and then you are looking at how far you're traveling per stroke and you're going into a big headwind, that could be really useful to understand, okay, right, actually, we're still traveling a really good distance per stroke and we're going into a headwind, even if the speeds are maybe a little bit slower. So that's also a really nice balance to be had when you've got other external factors going on. Then you get into a little bit more specifics of like wattage output. So this calculation is based on the integral of handle speed multiplied by the force on the handle. So if you go to, this is taken from Peach as in the telemetry system that tends to be the one that people use. And it's understanding that actually the force that you put through the handle that is then measured on the pin. So you're putting that force through and it'll show you a force curve and it'll calculate the watts that you take throughout that stroke. Then you have the distance, typically measured through GPS. Again, it's much more accurate than it used to be, but it's remembering that there may be inaccuracy. So if you've got your Garmin watch on and it's telling you that you've traveled 12 kilometers and then you've got your NK speed coach in front of you or your active tools speed coach in front of you, and that's saying something like 11,300 meters. Well, one will be taking into account the stoppage time, one might not be. So it's a good thing to use, but remember it's an estimate. It's not always going to be as precise as you might want it to be. And then other telemetry data that you might have, such as the catch angle or a finish angle, and the distance sort of traveled in front of the pin and the distance traveled behind the pin. So the objective of the Cox. So you've got the data in front of you and you're trying to balance that data with other inputs, whether that be the wind, the stream, we've mentioned these already, whether that be how well the crew is rowing, whether that be how much coaching you've got going on, whether you're doing drills. There's all of these external factors And then your job is to sort of navigate all of that information and then use that data to facilitate the rowers to do their best rowing. So you're still keeping at the forefront of your mind that you're supporting these rowers to make sure that they are doing the best rowing they can. You're never trying to use this data to just, as a stick. You're trying to make sure that you're balancing it with other information so that you can have, for want of a better phrase, a well-balanced point of view. Some sort of specifics in terms of where you might get this from. So if you're using a Peach telemetry system in the cockpit, you'll have a number of different screens in front of you that you could look at and you can cycle through. So if you've got the watts, you can either have the individual watts of all the athletes in front of you, or you could have the crew average watts. Now, the sort of things to look at is with the angles. Again, you've got the individual angles, and then you've got the inclusion of the catch and finish slip. But it's really important to think about what you're trying to get from that. So if you've got that screen up in front of you, and you've got all 8 rowers information in front of you, or all 4 rowers information in front of you, what is it you're trying to gain? So we'll come on to this in a little bit, but how you incorporate that information is super, super important. It's all very well having the raw data and the raw numbers in front of you. But if you're just saying, oh, well, the bow seat is producing 75 more watts than everyone else, you've got to sometimes question why that's happening. Is it because they're actually in ahead of everyone else and therefore they're picking up more of the boat? So it's just about managing and balancing your expectation. So you're taking in the picture that's in front of you. You're looking at what you're seeing. You're looking at, or you're feeling what you're feeling. And then you're thinking, okay, right, these are the raw pieces of information I have in front of me. What is the rest of the information telling me? And then you'll have a screen where you'll have, so you've got the individual screens, and then you've got a screen where you have the split, the distance per stroke, the strokes per minute, and the acceleration trace. And that could be a really useful screen to get your sort of average watts on there as well. And it's about making sure that you've got a bit of an overview of what's happening. So that's a lot more information to take on board, but it gives you a little less specificity. And actually, maybe that's something during a race you might want to glance down, pick something that you're going to focus on in that moment, in that split second, and then you glance back up and you take into account all your other factors, and that's how you're rocking and rolling. So this is just giving you a bit of an idea of some of the information you could have available to you in the Coxes Seat. Other areas where you could have information is a speed coach, a Cox box, a Cox orb, and so you've got a little bit more specificity depending on what it is you're looking for. So if you're looking at a speed coach, you might go back, or any of these devices actually, you can go back in and you can scroll through, and you may have recorded a piece. So let's say you've recorded a 500-meter piece, you can scroll through and you can use that information, use that data in hindsight. And I think sometimes what I found useful as a Cox is I'd go back in and I'd have a quick look and I'd think, oh, yeah, okay, that matched up with what I was seeing in the moment. I remember seeing those numbers, and actually I remember feeling this, that, and the other. So that can be really useful for self-evaluation for you as a Cox of what did you feel during that piece or that race? How did you think the sort of the data was playing out in front of you? How did you think it felt? Or maybe this sort of second 100 meters, you felt actually, yes, they were fast, but maybe they weren't as precise around the catch as you thought they could be. And you see there actually, yeah, it dropped off quite quickly. So in the third 100, we've dropped off another 3 seconds. Maybe we could have held on to that a little bit better. So that's really useful for evaluating your coxing, your input. So going back and thinking about the data. And actually, as a Cox, that can be super, super important. It's that idea that you've got the real-time data to give to the rowers, but then you've also got those numbers to go back to and sort of collaborate and think about, okay, what did I think in that moment? What was I feeling? What was I seeing? Do the numbers correlate that? Do they support that? And then you've got similar things on here. So you've got your split per 500 meters, you've got your distance and GPS, you've got your strokes per minute, got the time, the overall time, so really useful during pieces to be able to do timed pieces or see how you're getting on in terms of if you're achieving what you want to achieve in that session. So if you're doing it on distance, are you then achieving the time you want to achieve? Distance per stroke, check, which I will come on to, and then stroke count. So as a Cox, stroke count, super, super handy to have that. I don't know if any of you are like me, but I would often find counting, it sounds silly, but a little bit tricky when I have 100 other things going on in my head. So if we were doing something specific, like a fartlek session where there was 17 strokes on, 5 strokes off, times 10, 10 minutes break, times two, you're thinking, oh my God, how am I going to remember to count how many sets we've done, how many strokes we've done? So the stroke count there can be super useful. And then check. So I mentioned I come back to this. Check can be a really useful tool, but I want to be really clear that check isn't a bad thing in rowing. People think that check means bad. You want that to be as small as possible. Actually, the number of the check could be quite high, but it's actually how long you check the boat for. So what you don't want to see is that people are coming, hurtling into the catch, body weight on the foot stretcher, blades in the air, and then your back is like you're being sent off to hospital because your back's so sore. What you want is you want the boat to sort of, it will stop around the catch. It will feel check around the catch. It has to have that moment of time where the wheels come into the catch, they stop turning forwards, and then they start turning towards the bows. In that moment, it's about how quickly you can get the blade in, get the heels down, and change direction. It's not about how little you can check the boat. So that's just something to bear in mind. Especially with your feel, you might feel that a really particularly fast crew has a little bit more check around that front end. But actually, what you're really noticing is, yes, they have a little bit more check around the front end, but the attachment and the boat speed and the height of the boat remains really consistent. The stern doesn't go disappearing under the water. So we want to keep that boat traveling in a nice plane. So hopefully that makes sense. So here we go, cool structure. So this is how we can use this data. So we've got this information that I've just talked about, all this wonderful information that could be presented to you and put in front of you. But what are you going to do with it? And how are you going to do it? So the really simple way of thinking about this is the structure that you put into the calls that you're making. So what is it? How is it? When is it happening? So what is it that you're seeing? What numbers are there in front of you? What's happening with the blades? What is it that you're feeling? And what is it that is being presented to you in the moment? Are you seeing around that sort of back turn that everybody's coming in really nicely, but then we're sitting there for a bit too long, the handles are getting a bit stuck, you feel the boat just start to sink into the water a little bit, and actually the numbers, what you're seeing is you're seeing that the rate is quite low. The rate is down at sort of 16, 17, and then you're seeing the speed is fine, but it's a little bit inconsistent. And actually you're feeling that there's a bit of roll going on in the boat because not everybody is able to support themselves around that release at that point. So that's your what. You're thinking, okay, right, I'm feeling this, I'm seeing this. And then what do you want the rowers to do about it? Do you want them to keep the handle moving? Do you want them to sit still? Do you want them to sit up on the glutes? Okay, we're going to bring the rate up one. We're going to bring the rate up from 17 to 18 by sitting up a little bit taller and keeping the handles moving first. So that's your what. You've also given them a how. How do you want them to change it? So you're going to say, right, what I want is the rate to come up one. I want you to sit up a little bit taller. I want you to stack the trunk on top of the hips. And I want you to really be connected around the finish, but I want the handles to keep moving first. So to keep it really simple, you might say, right, we're going to bring the rate up one, sit up tall, handles keep moving. Then you must tell them when that's going to happen. It's super important in a crew boat, which typically in as a cox, we're in a crew boat. I think it's unlikely we'll be coxing a single, but maybe. Um, so it's about making sure that the crew are doing it at the same moment. So you then have your, right, we're taking it up one, we're going to sit up, keep the handles moving, and then we're going to say, this is going to happen on the next stroke, or now, or go. And if you keep that call structure in mind, what you're doing is you're facilitating the data that you're interpreting, that you're seeing, that's been given to you, and maybe it's you want them to be a bit quicker. Okay, right, we're going to increase the speed by one. Or maybe it's that you want them to be a bit longer around the catch. Okay, well, if you say to a crew, okay, we're going to go for more length around the catch, you don't know how they're going to do that. The likelihood is somebody in there is going to misinterpret that for reaching, and that, let's say they're in sweep, their outside shoulders dropping. So you think, oh, that's not really what you actually wanted. What you wanted was them to be in a strong position, letting the wheels roll a little further towards the heels, perhaps. Okay, that's how we're going to get another degree of length. Or if you want them to increase the watts by 10, okay, well, the average watts are going to come up by 10. What do you want to see from the individuals? Or let's say we're going to bring the average watts up by 10. Cool, they go up by 10. So you go from 150 watts to 160 watts. Well, there's the average watts, but the speed hasn't changed. The speed is still 210. Okay, well, what's going to happen? What do you want to see? So it's about thinking through the information that you're seeing and then being really simple in the structure of your call so the crews know what it is you're asking for, how it is you want them to change it, and when it is going to happen so they can all do it on the same stroke. And these are some questions I think that are worth putting in place when you are interpreting data or reading data. What are the raw numbers saying? Are they saying that you're going fast? Are they saying that you're going slow? Are they saying what you would expect them to say? Or are they saying something a bit different? So there might be a situation where you are going along and you've actually, one of the gates on the telemetry set is sort of a bit loose and it's spinning around a little bit. And so from that, you're seeing someone's lengths being a little bit variable. They're a bit shorter than they normally would be. They don't seem quite right. They don't seem that far off. They seem a few degrees wrong. And their watts are a little bit variable. So they might be pulling, or their force output might look like they're doing 120 watts, 60 watts, 170 watts. You think, that doesn't seem quite right. So what is it that the numbers are telling you? Is it just that you're going against a stream? Great. You've taken it into account. And then you've then associated, how does it look? How does it feel? How does it sound? You're using those senses to really think about, okay, what is it that the numbers are saying? And then what is it that I'm seeing, feeling, listening to? Does it sound louder than normal? Does it sound nice and quiet? Does it sound a little bit harsh around the catch, around the front? And then you're connecting those two things. And then you're thinking about, so the two things are supporting each other, you're connecting them, and then you're thinking about how will you help a rower make a change to improve a number if you don't think it's quite right? And that's a really, really key one. What you want to make sure is you come back to that call structure, and you don't always want to make a call that's so structured that it's losing its impact. You want to trust your gut, you want to go with your instinct, but it's so critical that the rowers understand what it is that you're asking them to improve and how you're asking them to improve it. And then how will you communicate the number to the rowers? So data's great, but if data comes with emotions, if data comes with negative connotations or positive connotations, that can be tricky, and it's a bit of a minefield to navigate. So really have a think about what it is that you can do to make sure that that information remains as information. And a lot of that is just making sure that, and I'm going to mention it again, but that call structure is there. A lot of it is about knowing that you've said what it is that's happening, and you've not added whether that's good or bad. You've just said what it is that's happening. It's just fact. And then you've said this is how it's going to change. And then, or you've said that's fine. I'm going to leave it there. I'm happy with that. And it's about being really clear on if you've said that the speed is X, that's just information. That doesn't mean anything. It's about, okay, the speed is X, and I really like that. It's really good. Well done. Or the speed is X, and actually, I think we're capable of shifting it back a couple of splits. We're going to do it by X, and we're going to do it on this stroke now. So really thinking about how to remove the emotions from the facts. And this all comes down to what you're trying to achieve. So are you trying to have impact immediate? Are you trying to make a long-term change? Is it in a steady state session where you are a little bit more conversational and you have the space and the time to discuss and talk through and bring the rowers into what you're hearing and listening to and seeing and you're asking them for their input? Or is it that you're in the middle of a race and you need an immediate change, or in the middle of a piece and you think, right, we need to change this right now. We have to stop this crew next to us making a move in us. How are you going to do it? How are you going to use the information that's put in front of you to be simple, factual, non-emotional, to get the change that your crew needs, to help them row the best they can row? And that sort of comes back to that key of understanding what success looks like. So when you go into races, when you go into your training sessions, you lay out in the briefing what success is going to look like. So, all right, well, today we're going to work on, in a steady state session, we're going to work on making sure that the drive is really cohesive. We're going to make sure all 8 pairs of knees are going down to the deck together. That's going to be our one big focus. You come off the water, if that was your one big focus, and you start talking about, oh, I didn't think that the recovery was very good. I thought we were sort of rocking over at different times. That wasn't your one big focus. So how is it that you are allowing your rowers to confirm that the data that you're using supports what it is that you are doing in that session, what the goal is? How are you going to keep it simple? And that helps you remove the emotion from it. Really circumstantial. And we've touched on this already, but absolutely key that we are using our senses. It is not just about what you can see. It's not just about what you can see on the Cox orb in front of you, on the speed coach in front of you. It's about looking at, right, there's the number. Okay, this number here is telling me, let's say we're looking at distance per stroke. This number here is telling me that the distance that we're traveling each stroke is, I don't know, let's say it's 1.7 meters. Okay, we're traveling at 1.7 meters per stroke, and we're doing rate 20. Okay, well, what are we going to do to make sure that we can just step that on a little bit? Okay, well, if we drop the rate one and hold it, that would be really good. Okay, well, what have you heard? What's the change there that you've heard? Actually, it sounds quieter around the release. That's good. That sounds more connected. So it's about making sure that the numbers are incorporated to all of the other sensors. This one's good. So the structure and the process. So it's remembering that the rowing must come first. What is happening in front of you that can be seen and felt, and typically is more reliable than numbers. Yet we've got the numbers, so why won't we use them? So we're really focusing on making sure that around that front end, we've got that good length. Around that back end, we're really pushing through the length. Okay, well, if the length is the focus, how are you going to make sure that you are incorporating that into the rowers so they understand it? And then prioritizing cohesion of the crew and the team So you may want to the split to drop and the rate to increase, but helping the crew to do it together will automatically make it better. It will automatically increase your boat speed. So you're using data to support what you're seeing, feeling, hearing. You're using the data to support the fact that you are building cohesion as a crew. And then when it comes to giving individuals data feedback, this could be a fun one. So one way of doing this is directing a call to one individual. So let's say we're directing a call at someone sat in the 5 seat. So what you don't want to do is look at someone in the 5 seat and think, I don't know, that just doesn't look right, and not know what it is that you're communicating or trying to communicate to them. So you want to say, okay, in the 5 seat, actually what you're seeing is that the blade is coming away from the water into the catch. And what you can see in the numbers in front of you on the angles from the peak cistern is that you can see that this person is at 52 degrees when everyone else in the boat is at 57 degrees. Okay, right. Well, this blade is coming up and away, and then it's coming back. And then you can also see that there's quite a large catch slip. So, okay, what we might want to see then is actually in the 5 seat, you're going to direct them to be a little bit longer, because what you're trying to do is bring them in line with the rest of the crew. Because cohesion is the thing that's going to make this better. It's the thing that's going to make the boat faster. So you're going to talk to them about being in a stronger position, allowing the blade to come down to the water. And then you're going to see that the stroke length increases to 55. Okay, that's much better. It's much closer. Okay, well, what if they set themselves up with better length off the back, right? Really get to the front edge of the seat and then think about from there, then allowing the blade to come down to the water. Okay, perfect. Now they're at 56, 50, sometimes 57. The rest of the crew is at 57. They're much more in line with the rest of the crew. So you've used the numbers to facilitate what it is that you're seeing from their spoon. Other ways to do this: collective calls to focus on a few individual changes. So maybe there's a pair in the boat. Maybe it's sort of the 6 seat and the 3 seat. Maybe they're two people that are quite typically, you know them to be quite bad at bum shoving. So their seats are slipping out underneath them out of the catch. So, okay, I want you to be really strong around the trunk. I want you to think about the glutes, and actually you're looking on the numbers and you're thinking, how am I going to bring these two people aligned? Again, we're using the angles, but we're looking at thinking about, okay, can we get them a few more watts, and can we get the angles? So you might have to change the screen a bit here. So during a session, that would be fine. During a piece, that's not going to happen. You're not going to be changing the screen during the middle of a 2K. So that'll be really good in steady state. You could flick between the angles screen and the watts screen. And you're thinking, okay, right, in the angles screen, you're seeing that their catch slip is getting smaller, which is great. And then on the watt screen, you're seeing that they're much more connected around their trunks. They're much more connected through their heels and their spoons. So the first thing that's happening is their whole body is suspending on the spoon. You can see that they've increased by 10, 20 watts. Awesome. Great change. You can tell them that. You can communicate to those two people, right? This has been really good. Well done. And you want to really think about why you want someone to change something. You're always holding on to that. Bring it in line with the technical model. Improve power application, the length, as we talked about, strength of the positions, and then injury prevention. So all of these things, like, you want to really hold on to that in your head. You don't want to call someone out because you think, oh, well, their watts are 120, but there's someone else in the boat pulling 170 watts. Well, it's steady state, and you don't know what that person's heart rate is. You maybe know a little bit more information about them, but what if you don't know the crew that well? So you've got to just assess what it is that you're seeing. And yeah, okay, we maybe don't want a 50-watt difference between the crew, but what if these people are 50 kilos difference in weight? What if these people are One person's rowing technically brilliantly and one person's struggling a little bit. It's about taking it into context. Ah, anesthetics. Sometimes we want it to look good. And sometimes for it to look good means that the cohesion is better. And if the cohesion is better, as we've talked about, we know it might go faster. The order of the above could always be debated. So lean into your technical model, lean into what it is that you're feeling, seeing, but again, use the numbers to support all of that, and use the numbers to support what your coach is saying. Use the numbers to support what you're saying. And then the next step really is about how to help the crew progress, how to feel part of that. You're doing your bit with your ownership by taking on board how to use the numbers and data in front of you. But how can you help the rowers feel that they are taking on ownership of that? So you've got that idea of giving them feedback, got to make sure there's trust there, and then you're allowing them to take on some ownership. So let the rowers know when something is changing for the better, and also let them know how it changed and what changed. So sometimes this will take for you to communicate with the coach because you're not going to be able to see everything. So if you've heard the coach say something to an individual athlete, let's say Susie over there needs to make sure that Susie, I want to see that your legs are leading out of the catch a little bit better. So that's what you've heard from the coach there. What you might then do is say, oh, Susie, that was a really awesome change. We dropped the speed by 2. That was brilliant. You really made a good change of leading with the legs there. So you're using the input from the coach to make sure that you're then giving her data to support what it is that she's changed. And that builds trust. Like the rower wants, the rower is used to sitting on an ergo or on a row perfect with a screen where they've got information stroke for stroke in front of them, telling them what it is they're doing, what is happening. So they're used to having numbers. So for them, knowledge is absolute power. That is critical. And so knowing where they are on a course is as important as knowing how they are contributing to the boat. So use the information, again, that is in front of you, whether it's speed, whatever it might be, to make sure that that person knows they are contributing more. And they're not contributing more than others, they're just contributing more than they were. Something they've done has meant that the boat has got faster. And that allows them to have an understanding of how to continue their contribution, but also of their responsibility to the crew, their teammate, the part they're playing. And building this feedback loop is really important. And building this feedback loop makes it imperative in terms of how we use the data and the numbers that are in front of us. So hopefully that was helpful. Quite a nice sort of snappy one this evening. We've had a few questions in already, and this is the next webinar coming up. So please, I'll leave this up for a little bit longer, but we'll move on to any questions. I think hopefully you should be able to, if I stop sharing, I'll leave this up for a minute. Hopefully you'll be able to send me some messages. Let's see. And in the meantime, what I'll do is I'll just go through a few questions that were sent in previously. So just to make sure that I have covered things. So I think I've covered the best way to use telemetry in racing and training scenarios, but I'll cover it a little bit more. So really making sure that the data that you've got in front of you is quick and easy to read. I think in racing, you don't want to be giving your rowers lots and lots and lots of numbers. You want to make it really concise. You want to be able to glance down and still keep focusing on your steering. So you don't want to be taking your eyes off the road per se, off the river, off the track. You want to be glancing down, absorbing a little bit of information, putting it into your good, cool structure to be able to give them something simple to be able to change. Or you want to glance down and say, yeah, that number's freaking awesome. Let's hold on to that. Oh, great question. How can you use effective length and catch finish angles in training? So this is a great question. So I think the really key thing here is making sure that as a group, that being your coach and your squad, it's making sure that you've got targets so you know what it is that you're looking for. So you want to know at the catch, maybe you're aiming for 56, 57 degrees. At the finish, you're aiming for 30, 32 degrees. And every stroke, you want to know that that's what you're aiming for. Now, what's really important with that is that you're not just achieving those lengths by falling around. You want to achieve those lengths in strong positions. And that's where the effective length comes in. So you can look at that and you've got a bar in front of you and you've got the sort of the block bar, and then you've got the catch and finish slips, which are a little bit less faded, shall we say. So you can see how much they're slipping either end. And what you want to try and do is increase that. So you know when that's getting smaller, we don't want it to be at 1 or anything like that, but you know when that's getting a little bit smaller, then they're in stronger positions and able to actually be really effective in moving the boat past the spoon. Other questions we had. How often should you be using the data from the Cox box or telemetry during pieces? So again, a really good question. I think this is quite individual. You typically as a Cox have strengths, and your strengths might be your boat feel, your strengths hopefully will be your steering, your strength might be your ability to multitask, and it's about knowing what it is that you're good at. And so you want to use the information when it's relevant. And that's where the circumstance comes in. So you're looking up and out and you're thinking, right, in front of me, got a bit of a headwind coming in. We're in the middle of a long training block. We've got 10 kilometers to row without a break. That's a good time to start dripping in numbers every now and then to just keep the encouragement. Yep, you're doing a really good job of holding the split where it is. This is how you're doing it. This is what I like to see. Good, keep doing it. Or you might, okay, we've just slipped off the speed there, so we're going to put back in place a little bit more accuracy around the front, a little bit more pressure through the foot structure. Okay, good. Effective length has increased. Yeah, really good. Speed has got better. Now we're going to hold that. So it's about really making sure that you're dripping that in. During pieces, you might want a little bit more information. So you might want to give them, you don't want to bombard them with information. You want lots of quiet space in there as well, but you might want to give them a bit more information on where they are on the track. You want to sort of be cycling through these things. Okay, where are they on the track? How far have they gone? What is it that you're seeing in front of you in terms of splits, in terms of rate, in terms of transition? What time is it that we're at? Okay, right. When 1 minute and 45 seconds in, we're going to really make sure that in the next 45 seconds, we are doing X. And with that, we're really making sure that we are being effective with our catch angles, holding on to length around the front. And it's simple. It's not complicating it and dropping in every single bit of information you could possibly see in front of you. They don't need to know that. All they need to know is how they will contribute to that boat speed, how they will be adding. I think that this is a great question. Do you use or share split data during head races? I think that there's a time and a place, and we've touched on this already. If you're racing on the tideway, sometimes the splits don't mean anything. You're barreling along at a 112, like that's pretty awesome. But actually, if you started off at a 105 and then you've slipped down to a 112, that's not so awesome. So it's about making sure that you're giving them context to the number that you're putting in front of them. Okay, yeah, we've set off at a 115. We're going to hold 115 for the next 10 minutes. We're going to do it by breaking it up into X, Y, Z, however it might be. Any other questions? Oh, okay. I think there's only one other thing that's cropped up, which is this is a really interesting one to me. So there's a question here about how every person in the boat takes a speed coach, which I find fascinating. So one thing to note about that is there will be inaccuracies through every speed coach. You can try it out, especially in an 8. If you put one in the Coxes seat and one in the stroke seat, and then you can have a bit of a conversation. You can see, depending on what height they're at, let's say one's on the top of the sax board, one's in the footwell, they will take a little bit of time to sort of sync up, and you'll have a bit of delay in when the number gets read. It's similar to when if a coach, if any of you are coaches, if a coach has a coaching screen and can see the data, that will have a bit of a delay on it as well. So it's about making sure that the information you're giving is just your information. You're not trying to lie. You're just telling them what it is that you're seeing. And it's making sure that there's a trust built there that what you're seeing is good enough for them to trust and believe in. So that's a conversation I think you have to have as a group. If multiple people are going to have speed coaches in the boat, it's super important in making sure that everyone is on board with how that's being shared. And there are a number of different ways to do that. And how do you know what numbers to aim for? Excellent question. So when it comes to speed in terms of GPS splits or rates, I think a rate is something that's a bit of an outcome. So you want to rate fairly high if you're in racing, but you want to make sure that it's something that's sustainable for you. So you have to decide as a crew, let's say you're trying in pieces to rate 36, and actually it feels a bit frantic and a bit scrappy, and you decide as a crew, no, a better rate for us is 34 and a half. It's also knowing that might come down a little bit in a headwind, and knowing that actually if you sit at 32, 33 in a headwind, that's absolutely fine. So again, that's a conversation you have to have. When it comes to speeds, there are some excellent resources where you can look up the gold medal times. And gold medal times can be really helpful in terms of the sort of end goal if you're looking for absolute gold medal, but then there's percentages, and working out a percentage of that isn't too tricky. So if you go online, you can have a look and it can help you work out the percentage of a gold medal time. Now, something really useful is looking back at historical data of an event you might be entering. So you might look back at a historical event and see that the winning time is, I don't know, I'm going to make something up here. Let's say it's 1500 meters and the winning time is 4 minutes 45. So, okay, that's your gold medal. So how are you going to work out what it is that you want to achieve? And there's a really good way to do that. And then you can sort of start to gently see how it correlates to the river that you're rowing on, or the lake that you're rowing on, or the conditions you're rowing in. So that's a good way to do that. When it comes to numbers to aim for in telemetry, it's a bit of a tricky one. I think there are some brilliant people doing some really amazing research into this. So one person is a woman called Connie Draper, and then also there's Valerie Klashnev. And so looking into BioRow and having a look at the numbers that are out there can be really interesting. But I think having conversations with other coaches And looking at information is going to be the thing that's going to be most important. And not everybody wants to share all their information, but there's information out there to be had. And the the best thing to do is communicate with each other so that the standard continues to improve and continues to progress. And that really is important in terms of looking at when you download the telemetry, looking at all of the factors, really going into understanding every element of the information that's in front of you. And if you're looking at a selection criteria, is what's the answer? I don't know. It could be. I don't know. I wouldn't say so solely. I think if you're selecting crews solely on what's, you aren't taking in the whole picture. You've got to think about all of the information I've just shared with you. Context. Is that person just getting in earlier than everyone else, and therefore that's why they're picking up the boat? Is it that they are much bigger? Is it that I don't know, there could be 100 reasons why that person's watts are better. And actually it's taking into consideration the context of that person. Are they rowing the lengths? Do they fit in with the crew? Does it fit in with the technical model? And that for you as a Cox is the crux of what you're looking for. You're really looking to understand the data that is delivered to you in that seat. And then you're looking to make it, contextualize it, and produce simple, digestible information, something that is actionable. Cool. Alrighty. Well, unless there are any other questions coming in, then I think that's me. Pretty not too long this evening, so that's good. Hopefully you can get back and have a bit of an evening. But any questions, please just drop them in and we'll I'm just going to share again so you can, just in case anybody wants to sign up to the next webinar. Let me share this again. Oh, there we go. So if anybody wants to sign up to this next webinar, please feel free. And thank you so much for coming.